Hello, in this lecture we will be creating financial statements for the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget, and actual. Last time we took this information, we are working on the government accounts as a city. We took the information in the left-hand area here. We plugged that information into journal entries in the blue area. We then posted that information to the trial balance in kind of a shorthand method, and that we posted it to the adjusting columns. So here's our beginning numbers, here's our ending numbers. Now we're going to take this trial balance here, this trial balance, the ending numbers that have been created. We will then make the financial statements from them, starting with the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget, and actual. So we have our setup down here. We're going to start, of course, with the revenues, and we will go through these numbers. When considering revenue, we're first going to take a look at the original and the final, and then we're going to look at the actuals here. So in order to pull that number from the trial balance, we're considering first the estimated revenue. Here's the estimated revenue, and that's the number we are looking at. We're going to break out this data, however, from the information that was given to us over here in the data. So we're basically pulling this number and getting the information on these categories, going to pull those categories over to get that total being what we're pulling from the trial balance here. So we're going to just list this out. We're going to say taxes for real property, interest, and whatnot, and list these out. So let me do that. I'm going to do that with a formula. So in U12, I'm going to say that equals, and I'm going to scroll all the way over to our data, and I'm just pulling these names here. So these names are going to be pulled over. I'm going to say enter, and there we have that. Now, because of the relative fund cell references, I can then just pull this down. So I'm going to highlight this and copy it down, and the references should copy down as well. So there we have that. I'm going to go ahead and indent this. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, Alignment, and Indent. And then I'm going to go to cell V12, and Equal. And I'm going to go all the way over here to this data again. Pull this 671, 628 for taxes in the real property. And there we have that. And again, I'm just going to pull that number down, copying the relative cell references. So I'm going to copy that down. And there we have the relative cell references. Then we're going to go ahead and total this up. So I'm going to call this total revenues here and enter. And I'm going to indent that one more time. So we're going to go Alignment, Home tab, Alignment, and Indent, and sum this up. So we're going to sum up these numbers. I'm going to say equals SUM using our sum function from the 671, 628 down to the 94.4. And we have that. I'm going to do some formatting here. I'm going to underline the 94.4 by going to the Home tab, the font group, and then underline, and then we will double underline the total revenue by going to the Home tab, font group, clicking that drop down and selecting double underline. So all we did here was pull this numbers down. We pulled these numbers and the descriptions down and over, and that matches what we had here in terms of our budgetary numbers. Now those numbers will be unchanged in terms of the final. So the final column, we're just going to say that equals and this number and pull that information over. I'm just going to pull that down, same numbers. I like to keep this one separate so that we can then copy this formula over and sum it up. So if we sum up, then sum these items up, we have that. And we could use relative formula or cell references in terms of the pasting the format by using the format painter, is what I'm trying to say, and paint that, and that'll put the underline and the double underline there. Okay, so that's this one. We've basically taken care of that number. Next time we're going to look at the actual, or now we're going to look at the actual, and the actual total we're looking for is here on the trial balance. So we've done this. Let's go ahead and say that one's done and make it green, and we're looking for this number now. So I'm going to make that yellow. That's the one we are considering. That's the one we are working on. In order to find what is included in this number and break that number out, what we're going to do is I'm going to put my cell on R24 and see what it's consisting of, see where this is pointing to. One feature to do that is we can go to the Home tab, or we can go to the Data tab, and Formula tab, and we can go to the formula auditing and use this trace item and that'll tell us what is included in this number. So the total is going to be that. We're going to break that total out into the same categories that we had here. So we're going to start with the taxes for real property. I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to go to the first item that was for the taxes. So that's going to be this item here, which came from the data in G2. So it came from the data here in G2, and we're going to pull in that 684 number. Now I want it to be a positive number since it's a credit there. All I'm going to do is put my cursor up here and flip the sign by putting a negative in front of it. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to say this equals for in terms of interest and penalties on taxes. Scroll over, and that is actually going to be this item here, the 3,000, and that's from G10. So that came from G10 way down there. So we're pulling over this 3,000, enter. Again, it's negative, so I'm going to put my cursor in front of the N, flip the sign by putting a negative in front of it. The next items we're going to be looking into is going to be what makes up this 561, 518, and that comes from G4. So we're looking at G4 here, and we're looking at this 240, the license and permits, the fines and forfeitures, going down in that order. So I'm going to scroll back over here. We're looking for the license and permits in X14. I'm going to say that equals, scroll back over, and we're looking for this 240, 526 there. Then the next one is fines and forfeitures, so I can just copy and paste that one down once we go back over. So I'm going to say enter, and I'll just do the same thing. I'm going to say this is fines and forfeitures, so I'm going to say that equals, scroll back over here, and we're looking for this number, this 164, 264, and enter. So there we have that number. Then I'm going to skip down to charges here because I see charges over there. So I'm going to be in X17 equals and scroll back over here, and we're looking for the charges in G4, charges for services. That's going to be the 92,728. Then we have the intergovernmental revenue, so that's in X16. I'm going to say that equals and scroll back over here, and we have this item here in terms of intergovernmental for G4, which was this 64, and then we also have this 46 over here, so this revenue right there. So I'm going to say there's that number, and I'm going to say minus this credit so that they add them up, meaning 64,000 plus 46,000 is 110,000. So there's the 110. Then we can go ahead and sum this up, equals the sum of summing this column up. And then I'm going to use the format painter to make the same format by going to the home tab, the format painter, and format those two cells. And then we're going to take a look at what the difference is in terms of the variance or the difference between the budget and the actual. So in this case, we're going to say this equals the budget minus the actual. And that'll give us a negative of 12,463 for taxes real property. Going to go ahead and copy that down, and that'll copy the relative formulas all the way down. Then we're going to underline, do a same formatting in terms of our formatting, home tab, format painter, and sum this up, equals the sum of these items here, and there's going to be our total difference. Now I noticed that we did have one actual change to the final budget here, so this was to the charges and the revenue. So we're going to pull the same number there, and then I'm going to say that this minus this last item that we had a difference in down here, or it's going to be plus the 2,000. So that service decrease, that should be included here, and it should be decreasing, so I'm going to say plus. So there's the 94.4, it's going down by the 2,000 to the 92.4. There gives us a difference of the 328. So I'm going to go ahead and make this item green just so that's connected to the trial balance over here. And then the next section we're going to be looking into will be the expenditures and encumbrances. Expenditures and encumbrances. In terms of the trial balance, this is going to be the account we're looking into. This account here, I'm going to make it yellow. We're going to look at the appropriations and what is included in appropriations. I'm going to go to that data again and go to the formulas, and then go to the formula auditing and trace. and there's the information that's in there. So we're going to be looking at this number and this number, starting with what is built in to create this number in G1 in terms of the data. Going back to the data, that number is being created by this information here, broken out between the general, the public safety, and the public culture, and the culture and recreation. So we're going to use that same information over here. So I'm going to go back over here, and we're going to say in U20 that equals, scrolling on back, and I'm just going to pull over these names with a formula. So the general government, enter. There we have that. Then I'm going to copy that down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that should give us down to the culture and recreation. Then I'm going to highlight those. We're going to go to the home tab and alignment and indent. So we have that, and then pull over the numbers. So I'm in V20 equals, and I'm going to scroll back over to where those numbers were at in the G1 area. We are going to be pulling the number from C11 on down. So I'm going to say enter. The related references will be the same, so I'm going to put my cursor on that cell and copy it down, and it should pull over the related numbers. Then we can sum that up, equals the sum of these 4 numbers, and that should add those up, and that'll give us the total expenditures. There's the total expenditures. Going to put my cursor back on there, home tab, alignment, increase the indenting. Then we're going to go over here to V23 and to the font group and underline, and then underneath that we will go to the font group and double underline, and there we have that information. Now there's going to be a slight difference in terms of the final because of the adjustments we made. Let's first pull over the same numbers. I'm just going to pull over the same numbers, and then we'll go back through and make the adjustment. So I'm going to format paint these, home tab, format painter, format paint these cells, and sum these up. This is where we're going to start, and we're going to make changes based on this second journal entry that happened. This item G11 down here. These are the adjustments we're going to be looking at in order to adjust those numbers. First we have the public safety, so I'm going to double click, I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to scroll back over here, and the public safety adjustment down here was this 4,000. So I'm going to select that 4,000 and enter, and it reduced it as it should by that 4,000. Same thing with the public works. I'm going to go to the end of it and say plus, and scroll back over to that data, the data down here for public works. Public works is the 640, and it's an increase. So I'm going to say enter, and we have this item went up by that number. And then we've got the culture and recreation. We'll double click on that, go to the end of it plus, and see if we have an adjustment, which we should, for that item as well. That's the 15,000 and enter, and so that gives us the 15,920. That, I believe, is all the adjustments for the expenditure side. Now we'll be looking at the actual amounts. I'm going to go ahead and highlight these and say that one is done, and we're going to look for these two. So we're going to say highlight these two, and that's what we are looking for in terms of this number. So I'm going to say get rid of that and say where are these coming from. So we're looking into these transactions, these journal entries, G3, G5, G6, and that's where the information will be gathered in order to enter this data. We'll start off with the general government. So we are in X20, and that's going to be equals, and I'm going to pull over the pieces to this. So we're going to say that it's going to have a G3 as a component, plus we're going to add in there G5. And so G3 was a debit of that amount. G5 we're going to say is the 27, and then we're going to add to that the 37,910 and subtract the 37,901, and that'll give us the 246,600. So again, if I look what that entails in terms of the detail, we're saying it consists of G3's portion of the general government, the 39,381. We have the general government for G5 data that was input, and then in terms of the expenditures and the encumbrances, we're adding the expenditure 37,910, and we have subtracting the encumbrances of the 37,901. We will do a similar process on down. So I'm going to say the public works is going to be equal to, and I'm going to go right underneath to the public works in G3 plus the G5 public works plus, and I'm going to scroll down to the G6 public works minus the encumbrances and enter. So there we have that number. Then we're going to do the same thing for the, I'm sorry, that was public safety. Now we're going to do the same thing for public works equals, scrolling back over. So we're picking up public works now, the 87 from G3 plus, and we're going to say the 235, 579 from G5 plus, public works, the 77, 763 from G6 minus the 77, 805. And that gives us the 322, 640. And one last time for the culture and recreation equals, scrolling back over, and we're going to pick up the culture and recreation from G3 plus, and we're going to pick up the culture and recreation from G5 plus, and we're going to pick it up from G6 minus the encumbrances, and that gives us our number here. And then we can go ahead and sum that up, equals the sum and of these items. Then I'll go ahead and copy the formatting. So format, copy that formatting over. There we have that. Then we're going to subtract this out for the difference column. So I'm going to say this equals this number minus this number. And that gives us a 280. Going to sum that on down. Then I'm going to sum it up here. And enter. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to say this equals SUM of these numbers and enter. And then I'm going to highlight these two, go to the Home tab and Format Paint, and there's that. And so those are going to be the expenditures and encumbrances. Then we're going to have the excess of expenditures over revenue. Then in V25, I'm going to say this equals and point to this, the total revenues minus the total expenditures and enter, and that will give us the difference, and we can then go ahead and copy that across. I'm going to highlight and copy that across, and that of course will give us the relative cell references all the way across. Then we're going to show the increase in encumbrances outstanding. There's no change here, so I'm just going to put a 0 here, and we have this item is going to be this number here, the 14,112, and then that's going to be the change. I'm going to say this is this minus this, and then we can go ahead and give us the decrease in fund balances for the year. So I'm then going to sum these up, so I'm going to say equals the sum of, and just these two rows, enter. I'm going to copy that across, just those two rows. Then I'm going to go and underline this, go into the Home tab, Font, and Underline, and then double underline this, Home tab, Font, and double, let's do Font, and double underline. Then we're going to have the fund balance for January 1st, and that is going to be from these numbers up top. So we got fund balance at the beginning from our trial balance. If we highlight these items, we get the 453,123. That's our basically our beginning equity number. And remember, these are like our temporary accounts here. So I'm going to say this is going to be the negative sum of these items here, and that'll flip the sign. So I'm summing those up, flipping the sign. And that's our beginning number, and we're kind of doing basically the equity section here, right? So we have the beginning number, and then we're going to have fund balance as of the end of the year, December 31st. And for that number, we'll go ahead and sum these up. So I'm going to sum these items up, which is these two, and then we have the 449,111. Now the fund balance for January 1st will be the same here, and it will be the same here, and therefore we're gonna have a difference then of 0. And then the fund balance at the end, I can copy and paste this formula, which is just the sum of those two cells. So I'm gonna copy that across. So then we can pick up some formatting. I'm going to delete the 0 there. I'm going to highlight these items and go to the Home tab, Font, and Underline. and then these items, and go to the Home tab font and double underline. And there we have the statement of revenues, expenditure, and changes in fund balance, budgetary versus actual information. Obviously, if we wanted to check this last number, we could just take all the blue items. Remember, all the blue items are going to be kind of like the equity section versus down through the temporary account, similar to the income statement, which would give us the 463,333. That should match this number here. It's also kind of like the net value of the organization. So if we highlighted all the green and the yellow, we get the same 463,333.